Carlos, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me.
You bet. So before we get in to your world, I want to know this. What is the sleep schedule of a bullfrog?
They don't sleep. They kind of do like a half in, half out,
I didn't think
one
so.
eye open.
Because there's the cartoons, the eye is always open, but I wanted to make sure if there wasn't something else going on. But so let me ask you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing everything, especially in the world of internet e-commerce and all of those things that were going on.
Yes.
Ultimately, how did you make it through the pandemic of 2020, and how has it affected the way that you live life today?
So interestingly enough, I mean, I sell my store that started the books sells fabric. I buy estate fabric and textiles, and I have a huge following for this vintage and antique fabric. So during the pandemic, everybody was making masks, and so my fabric store took off,
Yeah.
and I had two very, very strong months that I have yet to do better than I did for those 2 months during the pandemic. And I really think it also helped to bring customers to me that are still with me today. So I mean, I was packing up fabric left and right. It was flying off my shelves. So it was interesting. I didn't expect that.
So there's a lot going on with you between being a
Mm-hmm.
reseller and auctions and an author and everything that's going on, guest speaking. If I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds in a grade school for career day and one of the kids was like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
And this is still hard for me to say. I have always wanted to say I'm a writer, I'm an author, and even though I am now, it's still hard to say. It took a long time to get here. I've been writing my entire life. So I would like to say that my ego would let me lead with that. But it would be hard because I would still be okay. Well, I'm into resale. I think kids might relate more to writing though. So maybe I'd have. And coincidentally, I just wrote a children's book, but that's a whole different series. So I'm ready to get before the kids on that note.
So what did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream life?
A writer.
Okay, it was
My
writing always.
entire life. Yeah.
Okay.
I wrote a play when I was in grade school. I never wanted to be in front of people, though. I wanted to be behind the scenes. And I only recently started getting over my fear of speaking just since I started doing guest speaking and podcasting. So it's only been a few years. But I wrote this play in grade school, and parents came, and it was supposed to be this cute little production. And the person that was the lead role did not show up. And so the only person who knew the script was me. And I about died having to get up there and perform something I had written. It was, yeah. So it's been going on a long time.
So what were some of the other foundational elements? Are you originally from Ohio?
I am from Pennsylvania. I was born in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Been here since I was about 12.
Okay. So what were some of the other foundational elements that gave you this love of reading and writing and being a reseller and walking into that world? What were all of the seeds planted that has evolved into who you are today?
I'm not sure exactly when the writing started. Like I said, I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. I absolutely loved my high school composition class. And the teacher that I had, she was just tough as could be. Nobody liked her. I adored her. We clicked. I got married right out of high school, started a family. I can't say I ever really wanted to go to college. I just always felt like I want to write. And I feel like people who are true storytellers, it's not something that's taught. It's either in you or it's not. Now, down the road, when I got into doing editing and formatting and things like that, I was like, okay, this is where an education could have really helped me out, a further education. Um, but resale happened by accident. I was writing a lot during my 20s and my early 30s. I wrote four gigantic novels that I thought were insightful and exciting and, just these great, wonderful novels. And I had an agent for a while. I did have some reads with some prominent publishers. I was always missing those publishing credits that would get me very far. They always want to know, well, what else have you published? So after 10 years and a huge box of rejection letters, I quit writing. I had 3 kids at the time. Um, I really needed to focus on doing things that was making money. We had a big move during that time. Coincidentally, after the move, I was involved in volunteer work with my daughter at an equestrian horse center. And I was inspired by this program, and I was inspired by my daughter. And I'm like, I got to write about this. And so I wrote a magazine article, and it sold to the very first editor that I sent it to. And it was interesting because it was kind of, once upon a time, somebody said to me, write what you know. And in my 20s and early 30s, I'm like, wow, I have so much life experience already. I know so much. I can base characters on this. But it wasn't until I wrote something that I actually knew about that it sold, it clicked. So that kind of stuck with me. And I think at that point, I would have loved to take off writing and try again. Um, but then a thing called divorce happened and single parenthood. And I could not make a living selling $50 magazine articles. That's when I started looking for other side hustles that I could do to make money. Randomly, my sister said, I really think you'd be good at this eBay thing. eBay was pretty new at the time. So I gave it a try. I would go to auctions, and again, I had to get over my shyness. I didn't like to be in front of people making a scene. And the very first auction I went to, I actually elbowed the guy next to me and said, hey, would you bid on that for me? Because I just didn't want everybody turning and looking at me. It was something. I'm completely over that now. I am a maniac in the auction ring. But yeah, I started to buy cheap things that I could afford. It was a time when internet was not as advanced as it is now. You couldn't just pull out your phone, take a picture, look something up, and know what it was worth. You had to have a gut feeling about it. So I learned. I watched some of the pros. I would gamble, not very expensively, and I would have some big scores. And I was like, wow, okay, this is kind of fun. And it just took off. At some point, one of the things that I came across that was selling very inexpensively were boxes of fabric in the backyard. And auctioneers typically don't really care about fabric. They care about the collectible things, the things that the big bucks buy. So yeah, I picked it up cheap. And, long story short, eventually it evolved into its own shop on Etsy, its own custom shop that caters to quilters and crafters and people that like to recycle and upcycle. I take apart old textiles for the parts that are still good, and people put them into their art projects. I've got this great following. But writers have to write. It's always just there. So I found myself on these listings with this fabric. There were some incredible sales up against competition for the fabric, grandmothers and quilters. There were ridiculous stories behind the auctioneers. There were just so many little nuggets. And all of a sudden, I was writing about real characters. And it was easy because I had all the material that I needed. So I started to write these little essays with the listings to let people know this is where it came from. This is kind of how I got it. Isn't this a funny story? Ha 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 ha. And before long, I had several customers write to me and say, you know what, you really, really need to write a book. These are great. I've been on your site for 2 hours just reading your listings. So I was like, okay, but I'm busy. It's like, when am I going to write? It fell back into the same pattern when I was in my 20s and my 30s raising kids. I didn't know when I was going to write then either, but I would get up before everybody else and I would do it then. I had to start with my day with it, or it wasn't going to happen. So I did the same thing. It was the very first thing I would do every single morning. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'd be writing. That's how I start my day.
So who were early authors? What were early books that really inspired and swayed you?
It's interesting. One of the books that I remember the most, in I was in the 6th grade, and our teacher would read us a little bit of a book every day, and she was reading Where the Red Fern Grows. And every day she ended class with 20 minutes of reading this book, and I couldn't wait. To find out what happened next. Um, so there were other authors along the way, like Catherine Patterson. Just as a child, there were stories that I loved. When I was in my 20s, I read things like Danielle Steele, and I read things like Jonathan Kellerman. Yeah, it's just Jodi Picoult. She was a big one I read in my 20s, my 30s. Um, I think the most memorable that I've read lately. I have an aunt um, that I'm quite close with, and we have a lot of times at Christmas time we exchange books. This is what I've read. This is what I'm reading. Um, she sent me one year All the Light I Cannot See, and that one really stuck with me. That was a really powerful book. You know, um, I am sad that I don't read as much these days as I used to. The most time that I seem to find to read is when I'm on an airplane headed somewhere, or waiting somewhere. Having being able to get it on your phone certainly helps now. You can just pull out your phone and read a book. I used to devour books, and I spend more time now in this life in writing and everything. I wish I had more time to read. I miss it.
So speaking of online retailing
Mm-hmm.
and selling things, even eBay or even throwing Amazon in there, what do you remember one of the first things you ever ordered online?
That I actually ordered.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I am a much bigger seller than I am a buyer. My husband is the big Amazon guy, and there were years that we went without buying anything from Amazon. We just didn't even mess around with it. Um, and at one point, my son said to me, he said, I have this Amazon card that pays me back with every purchase. And he says, and I just buy everything. I put everything on that credit card. And then I get all this money back every month. And I'm like, oh wow, that sounds awesome. So all of a sudden we have this card, like, what are we going to buy? And we racked up like 8 grand in a year. And I say, I got to cut that card up because
Yeah.
all of a sudden the world of Amazon opened up.
Yeah.
Um, and now I find everything on Amazon.
Yep.
There's certain things that I buy on eBay too. But in the beginning, honestly, I was buying things like shipping supplies from eBay. It just was always much more fun making money than spending money. And it still is in a lot of ways. Unless I'm bored or unless I'm particularly, it's weird. It seems like when you're the brokest and have the least amount of money to spend is when I do the most shopping. And when it's the opposite, I don't want to spend money on anything.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
you know,
That's how the rich stay richer. They cut back, and it's that whole Warren Buffett idea of spending, using change in your car versus actual
yeah,
money. I still remember one of the first things I ever got from Amazon. It was still only a bookseller, and I remember I got this comic collection called Red Meat, and it used to be in like this weekly magazine in Kansas City, but I just still remember that's all you could do, and I still thought it was amazing then that there was all of these books and this whole world that you could tap into.
yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this. Who has been kind of a consistent inspirational force or hero for you to evolve into who you are and what you're doing as a writer and everything that you're doing these days?
Hmm. I can say I have, and I can't really say consistent. We were friends when we were about 8 and 9 years old. We actually were on the swim team together. Um, and her name is Kathleen Glasgow. I always knew her as Kathy Glasgow. And she released her first book, Girl in Pieces. I think it's been 9 years now. And she's young adult. And it was at a time in my life where, I was at that crossroads. I always missed writing. When I wasn't writing, I always missed it. But I just, I didn't know how to start again. 10 years of rejections is really hard on the ego. When I was asked by my customers to write a book, everything had changed. When I first started writing, you found publishers, agents, editors. You had a big, thick encyclopedia type book, that you would buy every year, the Writer's Digest, and it would tell you who to write to. And you wrote those letters. In the beginning, it was on a manual typewriter. Then I had a hand me down computer. So when I was thinking about starting again and I pulled up the internet, I'm like, wow, I don't even know where to begin. Everything's online now. And there was always this distinction between vanity houses and traditional publishing houses, and there was always this shame attached to the vanity publishing. And when I pulled up on the internet, everything was vanity, vanity, vanity. So I turned to this friend, and we were Facebook friends at this point, and I was so proud of her. She was always a poet. And she has a story about how she came to write her first young adult book. She was just, there's a story behind it. So anyway, it was a career change for her in a way. But this book just killed it. And like I said, I was just so proud of her. And so I followed her and I was kind of tweaking advice from her. And I had asked her, what should I do? I really want to write again. Um, and she had suggested going through Amazon. And I was just, the vanity publishing, isn't it? But it's so different now. It just really isn't. Um, so yeah, but she has 4 books now out that are single. She's a solo author, and she has 2 books that she collaborated on. And just watching her journey has really pushed me. Don't quit yet. Don't give up yet. And so yeah, I kept going. So I can't say she's always been an inspiration, but she certainly has been one the last decade.
So if you could hang out with any writer that's ever lived, whether they're alive or they're a ghost, and you could spend time with them and see how they wrote, see how they created, just be a fly on the wall to witness the process, because it's a real solitary act, but there's a lot that goes into it. Would there be someone you would love to watch and see?
And now I'm going to mess up the title because it's been a while since I picked it up. Um, okay, so the author behind Tuesday with Morrie, I like him quite a bit.
Mitch
He
Albom.
did, yes, he did a transition in his life. You know, he wasn't always a writer, but his books spoke to me. They
Yeah.
touched me. Um, and this is where there's another author, and the book is these is my words, them is my words. I'm going to mess up the title. But she was just a very, very simple woman with no writing skills, but she was a storyteller.
Yeah.
And she always kind of spoke to me. I think because I didn't go to college, but I always felt like I could still tell a story. You know, there's always some sort of, I don't know, stigma. People sometimes, at least in the 80s, it was a big deal. You should go to college. My mom was a behavior specialist. My dad was a psychologist. It was just always assumed you're going to go to college.
Yeah.
You know, so there was always this kind of, I think, this kind of need to prove myself a little bit. And so yeah, so she spoke to me as an author because it didn't matter. It didn't matter that she did not have perfect grammar. She could tell a story. So.
Speaking of storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
you're a speaker as well. What's one of the greatest speeches that you've ever witnessed?
That I ever witnessed. And that's funny. I have not watched that many speeches, um, but I submitted a video to Alex, from Podmatch San Filippo, and he was reaching out to have videos for the next virtual event. And I was new to Podmatch, but I had discovered this thing on Podmatch, this formula about how to get on more shows, how to really utilize your profile page and utilize your tag words. And I use tag words in my business all the time. Um, so I did this, I said, well, I've never even given a TED style speech. I've never even really watched that many of them. So I'm like, I need to watch one of these before I do this. And so I watched one, and I'm not going to remember his name, but he was one of the most liked speeches. And it was all about procrastination. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I got to send this to my son because, we're so much alike on that page, and he's highly successful, but he's been wait to the last minute on every single thing for the 39 years that he's been my kid. Um, so yeah, he gave a really great talk, and I did pass that around. I'm so bad with names. I'm like my dad, names just,
Yep.
but it was a really great talk about procrastination. Now, consequently, Alex did not accept my video for the virtual event. Instead, he ended up featuring it on his blog page, and it's on YouTube. And I was like, wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. He's wonderful. So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
What is it that gets you up every day? What is it that gets you up to do the work that you do, from writing to selling, all of these things that make you who you are, and to also take care of yourself and your family? What is that collective energy for you every day?
We start our day here at 4:30 in the morning. and it surrounds my husband's time slot. He is home at 3:30. And we have a lot of projects here at the house. We've been renovating this house for 13 years. So when he gets home, if we can continue to motivate ourselves after a work day, we're going to work on the house. So my work day has to be wrapped up between the books, the shops, everything else, typically by that 3:30 time slot. So that means it's 4:30 in the morning when I am yawning and tired that I have to get up. I can't go back to bed. And if I am currently working on a book, that has to happen first. If I put it off, I will never get to it. And then I try to roll into, okay, now I have to process my orders. I am a 5-star seller on Etsy, and I'm top rated on eBay. And in order to keep that, I have to ship on time. So I'm motivated. I got to beat the mailman. So that's the next alarm clock. It's like being in school. I have all these different periods, and if I don't get through them, the buying and selling, I have to say, nothing will light my fire more than to go to an auction. I will get rejuvenated. I will get excited. And I have an entire garage full of things that I could be selling on any given day. And I can walk around it and just, oh, I've seen it. It's boring. Nah, I don't feel like working on that. Let me go to an auction, and I will come home in the next week. I will be doing nothing but buying and selling everything that I found that's great at that auction. I'm freshly excited. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right now I am in hiatus, self-forced, unfortunately. I've had several really good auctions in my garage. I can't justify going to a sale right now. I just can't. And so I'm trying really hard to focus my energy every day, get out there and get some of these things listed. So, with eBay and Etsy, if you don't continually list things, I call it feeding the pig. It doesn't matter how many things you have listed. Nobody seems to see what you're selling. So if I don't feed the pig on a regular basis, then all my other listings seem to fade away. But if I manage to get some done every single day, then my sales stay steady. So there's all kinds of factors that motivate me, but basically it all boils down to that if I don't get up and get busy, I don't make any money.
Yeah, for sure.
One way or the other.
Uh-huh. So if you had a dream tonight, ran into the younger version of you before you got married, and were ready to go out into the world and create a family, do everything that you've done, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you impart?
I think I would tell myself to not be afraid to try something new, to not be afraid to branch out. Even when I was a kid writing, I was writing fiction. And I spent 10 years writing fiction. And it was finally a nonfiction magazine article that sold. It was finally nonfiction books that took off. I didn't think I'd start writing children's books. And, that's from a completely different part of my life, but it's the part that I want to celebrate. So I wish I would have started writing children's books sooner, because I'm really enjoying doing that. And, the first one was really well received. Like, why didn't I do that before? So yeah, not be afraid to branch out. It took me until I was 55 years old before I started public speaking. I've always been involved in charity work, and I used to do missions within the church, and I would have to stand up in front of everybody and talk, and I would be sweating and needing to drink water. I was a wreck, So I wish I would have tried harder towards that earlier on. There's this great big giant world of opportunity out there.
So of everything that you've done, accomplished, and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Right now, quite honestly, I'm really proud of and excited about the children's books. We have 8 grandkids, and we have a farm here. We have lots of fun things to do on the farm. We have animals and a pond and swimming and fishing, and they come for camp every year for a week. And spending time with the grandkids, doing missions, helping others, outreach, that's a huge part of my day. If I can't do those things, then there's a piece to the puzzle missing. So we bought this bus 4 years ago. We have 8 kids we got to get around. We bought this transit bus, and I painted it. I painted it like the Scooby-Doo bus, and It has flowered curtains inside and fur hanging from the ceiling and flowered seats. And, we rumbled around in this bus. And my mom always, she says, you really need to tell the stories of camp. And my friend, who is an artist who painted the covers for my books, she said, I really want to illustrate a children's book. And so she's 10 years older than I am, and she's living her dream. She became a painter very late in life after some really personal tragedies. And so we just said, you know what, let's just do this. But it just kind of became bigger than just writing about the camp stories. I've always kind of had a soft heart for kids, and I've started several missions over the years that helps underprivileged kids, whether it be back to school, Christmas, whatever. And sometimes I just feel like kids don't often get some of the message in their early years like maybe they could. Especially now, parents are busy. Two parents have to work. It's a different world for kids than when I was little. So the books became, yes, about snippets of things that happened at camp, but the books also became about sending a message to the child who is reading it, or the child that the book is being read to. And so at the end of this book, this book is the story about how we got the bus and how the bus was dirty and lonely on a car lot out in the middle of nowhere, and hopeful to find a family, hopeful to find somebody to take the bus home, to pay some attention to it, to fix it up, whatever. And so it goes through those emotions of hope, and then sadness, and then hope again, and excitement as the bus finally gets to go home, worry as all these changes are happening to the bus. Do I look ridiculous? What is going on? What is my purpose? I don't know what my part of life is right now. To finding out that the bus is now a camp bus, and just the sheer happiness of the children being happy and whatnot. So the end of this book, the message that goes home is, I am loved. And what we did to celebrate this message, we made, the little silicone wristbands. We had them made to match the book. And on the inside, when the child flips it over, it says, I am loved. So, we're already working on the second book. The second book, the message is, I am special. But we took the book on our first library tour maybe a month ago. And there wasn't anybody that was coming into the room for the book signing. So I went out into the library and started grabbing grandparents. Because, I'm a grandmother. So I would pull them, I'd pull them aside. I'd say, do you have grandchildren? And you ask any grandparent about grandchildren, their whole face lights up. They will drop everything they're doing to tell you about their grandchildren. And so I was like, we have a brand new book, and I'd love for you to come and hear about this book and come see the book. And every single person agreed to come into that room. And every single person bought books and bought bracelets, and we had T-shirts made. And, I'm going to send this to so-and-so. They have a birthday coming up. Oh, this is going to make a great gift. Both the illustrator and I were both there to sign the books. And there were people that wanted photographs to show their grandchildren. Come here, let's take a picture with us. We want to, So I'm excited about doing these books, and want to take books on tour in the bus.
Yeah.
Why not? Go to schools, go to libraries.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that you work with, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody that needs to slow down sometimes, but I don't know how. Um, I think I'm somebody that tries to do right by people. I think I'm fair. I think I'm honest. I think I'm kind. I think I'm giving. Yeah. I mean, I really aim towards those things. So at the end of my time, when, I don't want a funeral. Funerals are sad. I want a celebration, and I want people to talk about, she had a really big heart. And I think, I want my grandkids to remember that.
So if anyone wants to pick up your books, they want to reach out, anything you're selling, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
Okay, so if my Etsy shop is DodOddity, DodOddity. My Instagram page also runs under DodOddity. I do videos all the time now. It's like, now that I've started talking, the beast has been unleashed. So there's a bunch of videos there. I have an author page on Facebook. I have an Instagram page. Kira Hartley Klinger. My eBay shop is under Monner's Closet, Monners Closet. Yeah, I mean, you can drop me a line anywhere. I'm real
Okay.
good at answering messages, and I love to talk about projects. If you get the books on Etsy, I can sign them. You can also order them on Amazon, of course. So, and you get a free bookmark. I
Yes,
had
I love
bookmarks
it.
made with all the books, but they're super cute. They match the Arlo books, which I love.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the hardcover Arlo books I can only order myself. So if somebody wants a hardcover, they can buy it from me directly. They just have to let me know. Otherwise, Arlo's just in paperback, and that's a whole nother deal with Ingram Spark. But anyway.
Yeah, I get it. I will put
Yeah.
links in the show notes. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
luck
Thank
with
you.
your